Hello everyone. Today I want to share a special story about Mr. Phu, a Vietnamese man who once had a comfortable and fulfilling life in his homeland, but chose to leave it all behind to settle in the United States. This story isn't just for Vietnamese viewers. It's for anyone from around the world, whether you're from Asia, Europe, Africa, or elsewhere. It offers an honest perspective on the gains and sacrifices of life in America, especially for those who already have wealth, stability, or success in their home country. Is the trade-off worth it? Does moving to America truly provide a better future, particularly for your children? I hope this video helps you find clarity before making such a life-changing decision. When he first arrived in the US, he experienced a wave of disappointment and even considered returning home in the first day. But his journey didn't end there. It evolved into a remarkable story filled with challenges, triumphs, and valuable lessons that I believe can resonate with anyone considering the path of settling abroad. Please note that this story reflects Mr. Phu's personal experiences and feelings. It is not intended to represent the entire Vietnamese community overseas. Furthermore, this account is not meant to criticize or judge the US or the Vietnamese expatriate community, but to offer an honest and heartfelt perspective, helping others gain a deeper understanding of the complexities and realities of the settlement journey. Part 1. Life before moving to America. Before making the life-changing decision to leave Vietnam, Mr. Phu enjoyed a lifestyle that many could only dream of. Born and raised in Binh Duong, a peaceful yet rapidly growing suburb near Saigon, he lived a comfortable, prosperous life. His family was middle class, neither excessively wealthy nor struggling, but had more than enough to lead a fulfilling life, free from financial worries. Mr. Phu owned a thriving crane rental business. Although not a common line of work, it provided him with a stable monthly income of $2,500 to $3,500, a significant amount at the time. As the owner, he managed work schedules, supervised 2 employees, and maintained the equipment, a role that earned him respect from family, friends, and the wider community. At home, Mr. Phu lived with his wife and their 2 young children, an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. His wife was a traditional and capable homemaker who took care of the household and their family with love and dedication. Financial concerns never troubled her, as Mr. Phu handled the family's finances with great responsibility. This dynamic deepened her love and admiration for her husband. Their home was a spacious, well-furnished house in Binh Duong, conveniently located near the city center. It even boasted a beautiful garden and a maid to assist with household chores and childcare. This setup allowed the family to enjoy a peaceful and orderly life. Mr. Phu's daily routine was the epitome of ease and satisfaction. Each morning, he met with friends at a favorite coffee shop to discuss business or simply enjoy friendly conversation. Afternoons and evenings were often filled with social gatherings and lively parties, where his sociable and charismatic personality made him the center of attention, loved by everyone. Yet, this idyllic life took an unexpected turn when his wife's family proposed sponsoring the entire family to move to the United States. Pressure from his wife's family. Leaving Vietnam had never crossed Mr. Phu's mind. For him, Vietnam was home, the place where he had built his career, his family, and his life. But his mother-in-law and brother-in-law were persistent, frequently persuading him to consider moving. "Go to America, my son," his mother-in-law urged. "It's so much better there. The children can get a free education. The environment is cleaner, the food is safer, and there's health insurance and social welfare for the future." His wife, too, became increasingly insistent. She worried about their children's future and believed they would have access to better opportunities and education in America. At that time, the allure of the American dream was everywhere, with promises of prosperity and a brighter future. Part 2. The first day in America, a disappointing start. After over 20 exhausting hours of travel, Mr. Phu and his family finally landed in the United States. It was winter, and the temperature had dropped below 5 degrees Celsius, a stark contrast to the warm, tropical weather of Saigon that they had just left behind. Stepping off the plane, Phu was immediately struck by the biting cold and an unfamiliar silence. First impressions. Cold and alien. Phu's brother-in-law was there to pick up the family at the airport. As they drove along the highway, Phu peered out the window, taking in the scenery. The roads were lined with bare trees, their branches stark against a thin layer of snow. The landscape was vast but felt eerily empty. There were no pedestrians, no shops, and none of the lively street sounds that filled every corner of Vietnam. Curious, Phu asked his brother-in-law, "Are there no coffee shops or bars here?" His brother-in-law chuckled. "Everyone here is busy working. People don't sit around drinking coffee like back home. There are coffee shops, but they're mostly for takeout." The response left Phu feeling deflated. Memories of leisurely mornings spent sipping coffee with friends and evenings filled with bustling social gatherings flashed through his mind. Here, the wide roads and fast-moving cars seemed to serve only one purpose: work. When they arrived at his brother-in-law's house, Phu was taken aback. It was a modest house with a plain exterior, identical to the others in the neighborhood. It didn't match the grandeur he had envisioned when thinking about homes in America. Inside, the house was sparsely furnished, with a cold and impersonal atmosphere. There was no spacious garden like the one back home in Ben Chan, and the warmth and vibrancy of his Vietnamese home seemed worlds away. A wave of homesickness washed over him as he thought. In Vietnam, houses were always filled with laughter, but here, everything feels so cold and distant. That evening, the family held a small welcome dinner for Phu and his family. However, the celebration only deepened his sadness. The atmosphere felt restrained, a stark contrast to the lively and carefree gatherings he was used to. At one point, his sister-in-law reminded him to limit his beer consumption. "Don't drink too much. You'll need to get used to working here." Phu, trying to lighten the mood with his easygoing humor, joked, "In Vietnam, we drink until we're done." Instead of laughter, his comment prompted a stern response from his mother-in-law. "You'll have to give up those habits here. In America, people work hard. They don't waste time eating and drinking like in Vietnam." The tension in the room was palpable, and Phu began to sense the vast cultural divide between his new life and the one he had left behind. That night, Phu lay in a small, hastily prepared room. The cold from outside seeped through the blankets, making it hard to sleep. As he closed his eyes, vivid memories of his home, friends, and familiar routines in Vietnam flooded his mind. The laughter-filled meals, the camaraderie of his coffee shop gatherings. It all felt so far away. He tossed and turned, questioning his decision. What have I done? What kind of life will we have here? Was this a mistake? The thought of selling everything he had worked so hard to build weighed heavily on him. Regret began to creep in, and sleep remained elusive. Phu's first morning in America offered little solace. The household was bustling as everyone rushed off to work, leaving Phu, his wife, and their 2 young children alone. Stepping outside to get some fresh air, he was greeted by an eerie stillness. The streets were deserted, with no neighbors in sight. He turned to his wife and asked, "Why is it so sad here? There's no one to talk to, no life at all." His wife remained silent, her own feelings of strangeness mirroring his. Fading hope. As the days went by, Phu began to see through the rosy image of America painted by his wife's family. The bustling, opportunity-filled land they had described seemed like a distant fantasy. Instead, he found himself in a world that felt cold, unfamiliar, and disconnected. A longing for home grew stronger with each passing day. He thought to himself, "If only I could go back to Vietnam. Why did I leave everything behind for this?" But he knew there was no going back. His home and business had been sold, and he had uprooted his family for this new life. He resolved to try to adapt, though the sadness lingered, casting a shadow over his first days in America. Part 3. A few weeks after arriving in the United States, Mr. Phu's brother-in-law brought unexpected news. One evening, during a family gathering, He called from work with an offer. Pho, the pho restaurant where I work is hiring. It's not hard just serving pho. You can earn some money to help the family. For context, pho is the signature name for Vietnamese noodle soup, a beloved dish known for its rich broth and fragrant flavors. What seemed like a simple suggestion hit Mr. Phu like a thunderbolt. A man who once owned a thriving business in Vietnam was now being asked to serve food. He sat silently, his mind racing. This was a reality he had never imagined. His wife, sensing his hesitation, gently encouraged him. "Why don't you give it a try? We've just arrived, and any job is better than none." Looking at his two young children and the uncertain road ahead, Mr. Phu reluctantly agreed. Yet, deep inside, he felt a pang of humiliation and sorrow. Walking into the pho restaurant for the first time, Phu felt a mixture of anxiety and embarrassment. The owner quickly showed him the ropes. Serve food, clear tables, and occasionally help out in the kitchen. As he carried the first bowl of pho to a customer, he couldn't shake the feeling that all eyes were on him. Flashes of his life in Vietnam filled his mind. His role as a respected business owner, managing workers, and hosting clients. Now here he was holding bowls of soup. "At that moment I felt so small," he later admitted. "I wanted to cry." Each workday stretched from 10 to 12 hours. The constant movement, standing, walking, bending, left his legs and arms aching. The smell of broth and grease clung to his clothes and hair, a reminder of his long, grueling shifts. By the end of each day, he felt utterly drained, physically and emotionally. Bitterness and homesickness. That evening, as he returned home, Phu sat quietly at the dining table. His wife, noticing his silence, asked, "How was your first day? Are you doing okay?" He nodded slightly but couldn't bring himself to speak. A flood of emotions swirled within him. Bitterness, regret, and a profound sense of loss. The life he had left behind felt like a distant dream. The memories of cozy family meals, carefree mornings with friends at coffee shops, and his pride as a business owner haunted him. Here, he was no longer in control of his destiny. He was simply trying to survive, finding the strength to move forward. Despite the emotional toll, Phu resolved to keep going. Returning to Vietnam wasn't an option. His assets were gone, and his children's future depended on his perseverance. He knew that he had to adapt to this new reality, no matter how challenging. The first days at the pho restaurant were more than just a shift in work. They were a profound lesson in humility and resilience. "I kept reminding myself that this was temporary," he said. "Even though serving pho wasn't my dream, it was a necessary step to survive and build a new life." With this determination, Phu began to focus on the future, using each challenging day as motivation to secure a better life for his family. Part 4. The Journey of Adaptation and Stabilization. Over time, Mr. Phu slowly adjusted to the demanding pace of life at the pho restaurant. Each day began early and ended late, filled with serving pho, cleaning tables, and assisting in the kitchen. While the job didn't require advanced skills, the relentless work took a physical toll on him. During short breaks, he would often glance at his colleagues, many of whom were also Vietnamese immigrants, some doing this job for over a decade, and wonder, "Is this what I'll be doing for the rest of my life?" In the beginning, Phu still struggled with feelings of embarrassment and self-consciousness. However, interacting with customers, especially fellow Vietnamese, gradually brought him a sense of connection and warmth. One customer, noticing his struggles, offered a few kind words. "When you come here, take it slow. Everyone starts with jobs like this, but if you're diligent, things will improve over time." Those simple words gave Phu the encouragement he needed to persevere, changing jobs and finding stability. After about a year at the pho restaurant, Phu decided to look for work that felt more aligned with his skills and ambitions. Through an acquaintance, he landed a job as a construction worker. Although the work was far more physically demanding, it came with higher pay. Each day, he picked up new skills, such as system installation and home repairs, adding to his growing resilience. Over the next few years, Fu worked a series of jobs, including welder, school janitor, and repairman. While none of these roles offered long-term stability, they helped him better understand the realities of working life in America and allowed him to save a modest amount for his family. During this time, Fu's wife, who had initially stayed home to care for their children, began working in a nail salon. Though the work was exhausting, it provided a stable income and helped the family save for their children's education. After 5 years of hard work and careful saving, Fu and his wife reached a significant milestone, purchasing a small house in the suburbs. Though modest, it symbolized their determination and progress in their new life. For Fu, it was a moment of pride and hope, even as he continued to labor in physically taxing jobs. Meanwhile, their children were thriving. They adapted well to the American school system, excelling academically and becoming fluent in English. Watching his children grow in confidence and seize new opportunities reassured Fu that his sacrifices were not in vain. Meanwhile, their children were thriving. They adapted well to the American school system, excelling academically and becoming fluent in English. Watching his children grow in confidence and seize new opportunities reassured Fu that his sacrifices were not in vain. Life may be hard for me, he reflected, but if it means my children have a brighter future, it's all worth it. Despite these achievements, Fu faced lingering challenges. His English proficiency remained limited, making it difficult for him to fully integrate into American society. The close relationships he had cherished in Vietnam were now just distant memories. Looking back and moving forward, Mr. Fu's journey of adaptation and stabilization was filled with obstacles and uncertainty. There were moments when he considered returning to Vietnam, but his sense of duty to his family and his dream of a better future for his children kept him grounded. Life in America isn't easy, he said, but it teaches you how to persevere and how to rise from even the smallest starting point. While Fu still struggles with feeling truly comfortable or happy in his new environment, he remains steadfast for the sake of his family. His wife and children are his greatest treasures, and their success is his ultimate motivation to keep trying, no matter the challenges. Part 5. More than 20 years in America, gains and losses. 20 years have passed since Mr. Fu first arrived in the United States. Now 63 years old, his once dark hair has turned gray, and his face bears the marks of time and decades of hard work. His journey in America has been anything but easy, but it has also brought him accomplishments he never imagined. 2 successful children, the pride of his life. Mr. Fu's 2 daughters are now grown adults. Both graduated from prestigious universities in the US, have stable jobs, and live fulfilling lives with their own families. Reflecting on their journey, Mr. Fu feels an overwhelming sense of pride. The day his eldest daughter graduated from university was a deeply emotional moment. Tears filled his eyes as he remembered his early days in America, working long hours at a faux restaurant and taking on physically demanding jobs to provide for his daughter's education. He often wondered if his sacrifices would pay off, and now the answer is clear. His children's success is his greatest reward, yet his pride is tinged with regret. Having grown up in America, his daughters have gradually lost touch with their Vietnamese heritage. Their Vietnamese is broken, limited to basic sentences, while their English is flawless. Once, during a family meal, he tried teaching his youngest daughter how to pronounce some Vietnamese words. She laughed and said jokingly, "Dad, it's so hard. Speaking English is easier." Although he chuckled along, a lump formed in his throat. He realized that while his children had fully embraced American life, they had drifted away from the culture and language he cherished. Sacrifices and loneliness. Life in America for Mr. Fu and his wife was never a fairy tale. Raising successful children required enormous sacrifices. Time, health, and personal dreams. His wife, who once stayed home to care for their children in Vietnam, became a skilled nail technician. Though her work provided stability, it was physically exhausting and emotionally draining. Even after 20 years, Mr. Fu found it difficult to fully integrate into American culture. His English remained basic, sufficient for daily communication but not for deep, meaningful conversations. Social interactions were limited mostly to other Vietnamese immigrants. In a candid conversation with a friend, he shared, "In America, my children have succeeded, but I always feel lonely. Everyone here is busy working, rushing from one task to another. No one has time to sit down, drink coffee, and chat like we did in Vietnam. My body is here, but my soul is still at home." At 63, with his children grown and independent, Mr. Phu decided it was time to prioritize his own happiness. "I don't want to spend the rest of my life feeling lonely," he told his wife. "The children have their own lives now. It's time for me to live for myself." While his wife chose to stay in the US to be close to their youngest daughter and grandchild, Phu returned to Vietnam alone. He settled into a small house by the sea, where he could enjoy the peace and simplicity he longed for. In Vietnam, he felt a renewed sense of belonging. Surrounded by relatives and friends, he rekindled old connections and relished the chance to attend social gatherings that reminded him of his former life. "Here, I don't need to be wealthy," he said. "Just seeing people every day, talking, and sharing meals is enough to make me happy." Gains and losses after 20 years in the US. Looking back, Mr. Phu reflects on his journey with clarity and humility. The gains: his children are well-educated, successful, and secure in their futures. Despite hardships, he and his wife built a stable financial foundation. America taught him invaluable lessons about perseverance, independence, and the dignity of labor. The losses: his children's connection to their Vietnamese roots has faded. His health and youthful years were consumed by the struggle to survive. He never felt truly at home in America, where life moved too fast and relationships felt distant. A thoughtful perspective. Mr. Phu's story is not meant to define or judge the experience of settling in the US. It is a deeply personal account of the sacrifices, trade-offs, and lessons that come with building a life far from home. "There's no perfect choice in life," Mr. Phu often says. "Every place has its challenges. What matters is knowing what you value, being ready to face difficulties, and always holding on to love for your family." Mr. Phu's journey ends with a peaceful return to his homeland. His children continue to thrive in America, and he has found solace in the familiar comforts of Vietnam. It's an imperfect story, but one filled with humanity, resilience, and meaning, offering a lesson worth pondering for anyone seeking a better life abroad. If you enjoyed this story, please give me a like, subscribe, and leave a positive comment to encourage me to create more videos. If you are someone who has immigrated to or currently lives in the United States, please share your story in the comments below. Your experiences could inspire, motivate, and provide valuable lessons for others. Thank you for watching.